Three, two. Hey guys, welcome to lesson number five, also the final part of the IEEE Python Fundamentals course. So on this lesson, we're going to be talking about functions, on what they are, how we use it, why we use it, and just overall the benefit of functions. And as well as I'll give you guys some questions as well, midway and at the end. And just, yeah, let's get right to it. So, what is a function? Function is basically just a piece of code structured in a way where we can call that block piece of code over and over in the rest of our program without having to rewrite all of its tasks. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have a code, let's say you have a list, um, you have an empty list, right? And you wanna append the value, I don't know, one to it, and then append two as well to it, right? And you wanna keep doing this over and over. So I don't know why you need to do this, but hey, you never know, right? So instead of writing this three, 6 lines of code, we could do something like a function which does append to list, and we want this to basically do this kind of code over and over again. But before we get there, let's start off with how a function is actually written. So the basic structure of function is this: def function name brackets, and then uh, line one, and like this, all the piece of code you want to do should be intended under the def. So def is short for define. So you're defining a function name, and let's say you have a function which calls print hello world. All right. So and let's say you wanna default it just to write function name, and that should print hello world. There you go. So a few things to note here. What's happening is Python does not run this kind of code immediately. So that means since Python is interpreter, right? It goes line one, nothing, two, nothing, so on and so forth. Till it comes here and say, okay, this is actual function call. That's how we say it. And it looks, okay, what is function name? It looks in the code for function name. Okay, I see it in line three. It goes here and then does the tasks under it. So print hello world. Same way we can keep adding to it. Print line 2, for example. Oops. And print line 3. And you'll see that, yeah, it's printing in line by line, whatever is inside. And the benefit of doing this is instead of writing these 3 lines again, I can just be like function name. And that should print it, see, runs it once or runs it twice. Okay? Okay. So now that we're done with this, we shall talk about parameters and arguments. So what are those, right? A parameter is basically something you pass onto a function to make it do something else, to basically make use of the variable. So, for example, you want to have a function which greets someone, right? And I want to greet a specific person, name. So I want to basically like print greet. Sorry, no. Yeah, I just want to print hello and then the name. So let's add a space here. Print hello name. So now if I want to call it, I have to pass in a variable, which in this context is called an argument. The argument is used within this function. So if I, for example, if I like greet Razine, my name, right? And I run this, it says hello Razine. What is happening here is now this Razine is basically name. So it's like since writing name equals to Razine, does that, and then it prints hello Rosine. And this really provides flexibility in our code, right? So now instead of writing hello all over again, I can just mention the name on who I want to greet. It can be like greet John Doe, for example. I run this. Now you can see what's happening now is first time we just call, it goes to greet. It says, okay, what is name? Name is Rosine. Okay, so now what am I supposed to do with that? It goes here and goes, okay, print hello Rosine. Next line, it goes here, greet, okay, what's my name? John Doe. Print John Doe. Print hello John Doe. And yeah, that's basically how arguments work. You can add as many arguments as you want to a piece of code. So for I can have an arg called add tree, right? And I want to add three numbers, num1, num2, num3. And so I want to print, okay, num1 plus num2 plus num3. And you can really have as many parameters you want. There is no actual limit to how many parameters you can have. So for example, I have three parameters here. And so if I want to do it, I'll be like add three, pass in three numbers. I'll just do 1, 2, and 3. And as you can see, I get 6. You got to make sure that numbers of uh, variables you pass through match how many the functions require. So for example, if I pass in two numbers, 1 and 2, it's going to give an error. Why? Because it needs three arguments, but I'm only passing in two. And yeah. Now, what if there is a case where you don't need to do that, which is something called a default value for an argument. So let me show you how that works. Let me say def um, add 2. So I can be like num1, and if I do something like num2 equals to 1, right? And then right, I want to print num1 plus num2. So what I'm doing right now is something called a default value, right? Which means I can do add to 1. This should print 2 because num1 is what I'm passing in 1, and then num2 is the value of 1. So let's run this. It prints 2. But, however, I can replace this value as well. I can be like 3. So now I should do 1 plus 3, which is 4. See? So this is something called default values in arguments. I can also do something like, let's say, um, so if I do, let's say num1 is initially 4, right? So now I can pass in with no arguments. It should do 4 plus 1, 5. And now let's say I only want to change num2 now. So to make it noticeable, I can just do this print num1, print num2, and then I want to print the addition of those num1 plus num2. Okay, so if I run this, you can see it's saying 4 plus 1 equals to 5. But I want to change only num2 now. So what I can do is I can also mention which one I want to change. I can be like num2 equals to 7. So now let's see what happens. It's doing 4 plus 7 plus 11. See, it only changed num2. Num1 stayed untouched. I can also be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to change num1 as well. Let's make it 0. Okay, let's see what happens. 0 plus 7 is 7. So yeah, that is basically how keyword and positional arguments work, and also covering default arguments. All right, now we're going to talk about is something called the scopes of variables. All right, so let's just scroll down here, comment this line out. I should just delete it. So you see, like in these functions, we have variables such as like name, num1, num2. Yep. So what if I had name here. Let's say name equals to Razin. Now if I do print name, it prints Razin, right? However, mhm, can I, if I delete this name over here and I still do greet, let's see what happens. It prints hello Razin because even though the variable is declared below the function, we're looking at when the function is being called. So if I put name here, for example, this would not work because this function looks for what name is. There is no name being passed on to, so it looks in the overall code, is there any name mentioned? And it's not because, as I said, it goes line by line and it does not see any name. So that is why if you put it over here, it works perfectly fine. And however, if I do, put name here as well, and now I have to do, let's say, greet John, it won't look at this name anymore. Instead, we'll look at what this name is. And this name is John. Hello, John. When this John is being passed this name here, it does not touch this variable. Okay? So if I do print name, you'll see it is not John, it's still Razin because name is within the name inside the function stays inside the function. It is not touching this. Hello, right? However, now if I do something like name equals to Razin as well over here, that means it should always print hello Razin. And my initial name is 123, for example. You can see that it still does not touch this name. So that means when a variable is inside a function, defined in a function, or as a parameter, it ignores the value outside it. So that's how what a local and global variable is. Here, this name is local to this function, but this name is global. So if a local name doesn't exist, it looks for it in the global scope. Okay, so now, so far, our functions, all it does is printing. But in the real world, we usually use our functions for more things such as calculating complex things or returning whatever we want, right? So we're going to talk about return statements now. So let's say def addition. And I want to add two numbers, or actually let's do three numbers, right? So what I want is I want, let's say, variable sum equals to addition of the numbers 3, 4, and 5, right? So how do we do this? Normally what we do is would be like sum equals to 3 plus 4 plus 5. But instead, when we're using a function like addition, we can be like return n1 plus n2 plus n3. This does the same thing, right? So you have to print the sum afterwards. Print sum. So as you can see, it added 3 plus 4 plus 5, stored it in the variable sum, and then print it out. We can also change this. So let's say I want to subtract it from the addition of 1, 2, and 3. So this is 12, 12 minus 6. So this should be give us 6. Right? So instead of writing something like the equivalent statement for this would be sum equals to 3 plus 4 plus 5 minus 1 minus 2 minus 3, which can be cumbersome to write. So that is why just the use case of why we use functions. Now, what I'm going to talk about now is how we use functions. More specifically, how do we use a function someone else wrote? Because in the real world, when you're building in a group project or just making your own project alone, it's good to do something called factorize your program, which means have functions to do one specific task such that if you need to change code, you only change the function and then use the function everywhere else. So let's say I'm Razin, right? I work on a function in razin.py, and this can be a function called multiply. As a developer, right, or a programmer, you want to use this function which I created, but you don't want to rewrite it yourself. But you shouldn't have to, right? It's the same thing as saying you shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every time. It's already been made. Hence, we're going to do something called importing this function. So as you can see, I saved this function in a file called razin.py, and this file is called main.py. So the way you import a function is you go on top and you write import Razin. What this is doing is it's importing all the functions I have on this file, razin.py, and putting it here. So now I can do something like this. I can do print. The way access is do Razin, the file name you're importing from, dot, the function name. As you can see, it shows up here, multiply 7, and let's do, I don't know, 2. So this is doing is it's using the function created by Razin in this file, and you're calling it. So if I do, it should do 2 times 7 is 14. So like this is how you collaborate with other people. You share functions. You also break down your code to various parts. Just so it's easier to, keep track of it. And then if name equals to main, or well, the name of the file you're in, for it's main right now. So over here, we can put code. Let's say greet Razin, and I don't know, let's say I want to print the addition of 1, 2, and 3. For example, if I run this, you'll see it does this code, even though I haven't explicitly called read over here, right? And the reason this is the case is because when we're writing code in the real world, oftentimes we want to both export our functions onto different files, but as well as run the file itself. So what this is saying is, okay, in case I press run on this page itself, only then you shall run these codes. A better way of saying it is, in the real world, practically when you're writing code, right? You want two things. You want your code to be usable by others, be modular, and yeah, just get the job done as is. So you don't want huge messy code with like random print statements, random sums, and you don't want random things to be called all the time. That is the main reason when you're coding, it is good practice to break it down into various functions, each doing a single small task. And at the end, when you run the script, you want to make sure that, okay, I only run this code if I'm on the main file itself, or like this specific file itself. And yeah, that is basically an intro to Python functions. Obviously, there's a lot more you can learn, a lot of things I haven't covered in this short video, but I hope this is a good starting point for you guys on how you can use functions and really experiment with it. Please go through the questions which is connected to these videos. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to text us on Discord or just contact us however you feel like, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. And yeah, thank you for listening to all these videos. Thank you all for watching the series. Hope you guys learned something. And yeah, Take care. Bye bye.